So I am Brandon, and I'm going to be talking about Protomaps, which is a project I've been working on for a couple of years now. And the title of this talk is An Infinite Map and what that has to do with OpenStreetMap. So just as a framing, I have this view of OSM that I think a lot of people share, which is that it has infinite possibility. And there's sort of two meanings of that. The first one is that OpenStreetMap can be infinitely detailed. It has an open-ended tagging scheme. It is not set to a specific closed set of layers, like land use and buildings. But it's totally open-ended. It's just keys and values. For example, you can tag waste baskets if you wanted to. There's no real limit on things you can tag. So for example, if you wanted to make a map about golfing, there is golf-specific tags that are inside OpenStreetMap that's enabled by this open-ended sort of keys and values scheme. The other way that OpenStreetMap is infinite is that it is reproducible. It is all under an ODBL license. It is free to download. There is donations of servers that are provided very generously and bandwidth. So you can download the entire planet dump or parts of the planet basically for free. And the cost of transferring it like to your computer is very low. It's just downloading things. There's even mirrors around the world where you can reproduce the entire OpenStreetMap data set. And that's sort of the value of the project as an open source thing, is it's not like some data set where you have to pay per download or license it on a per use basis. That's really like the power of open data for a lot of use cases. So I've sort of sold you on the idea of OSM as being infinitely reproducible and infinitely possible, but that's never been true of tiles. So why do we care about tiles? So tiles are like a primary use case for OSM is building a tiled web map. And that's like an illustration of how tiles are generally laid out. They have zoom levels, they make interactive maps possible. But OpenStreetMap is the opposite of infinitely reproducible for tiles. OpenStreetMap data is free for everyone to use, but our tile servers are not. I'm sure everyone has seen this before. OSM Carto, they have to scale up a worldwide tile server, and it is not it's not really polite to like scrape it to make mass downloads of it. And you can't really take all of OSM Carto and put it on your own machine because it's so many tiles, and there's like a complex way to produce those raster tiles. So there is sort of like other commercial providers of tiles, but usually these are sort of the same situation. You can't like scrape the tiles or bulk download them. They're usually some sort of like metered usage model where you might have a starter plan, an enterprise plan, you pay money to access them through an API. That's the opposite of being able to reproduce that tile set really easily. This idea of infinite possibility from OpenStreetMap is usually not the case for these tile set data. There's one of a fixed number of sort of open source or commercial products, and they already have baked decisions into them as to which OSM features exist at which layer. So for example, I have this example of zooming in Virginia, and certain data only exists at certain zoom levels. So while this is vector tile based and you can change the colors or the rendering style of features that exist, you have no control over which data already exists in those tiles at which zoom level. That is usually not like customizable. It's usually like you have to use a pre-packaged tile set. So it's not as open-ended or flexible in those senses. So what Protomaps, the Basemap is the missing vector tile cartographic product for OpenStreetMap. And the end goals for this are to be infinitely flexible and open source so you can reproduce it very easily. This was recently open sourced at this repository on GitHub. And how do I use it? there's intentionally not a complicated setup step involving provisioning servers or running databases. Just like with OSM Planet File, it is a single file download you can find on my website. What this looks like is it's just a URL to about a 100 gigabyte file. You can inspect it. It is a global tile set that has a preset of layers based on OSM. And that can be hosted on your own storage very easily. And just a view of kind of styling applied to that X-ray view. So just zooming in on Virginia, it has some decisions baked in as to which features exist at which zoom levels, doing some generalization, some choice of place names, for example, from OpenStreetMap. So a little more description onto how this thing works. It uses an accompanying file format called PM tiles. It's about 100 gigs. The license of the output is an ODBL produced work. So it is a transformation of the ODBL database into a visual product. And it also mixes in currently some other public domain data sets such as Natural Earth. And it can be used directly with a front-end library such as MapLibre or Leaflet without having to run a tile server in between. And the purpose of that is to make it accessible in terms of anyone from a hobbyist to a company can easily run and reproduce this infrastructure without having to do a lot of system administration. So the recent open source parts about this are an open source build of this data product based on the on-the-go Map Planet Tiler core library. Some of the things I did recently are add the PM tiles output format directly to Planet Tiler. So if you're using Planet Tiler, you can output the format just as easily as MB tiles and then host it. And the motivation for this new build based on Planet Tiler is the generation speed. If you want to customize the build to add certain tags or have specific content for a theme, it needs to be fast. And I'm pretty satisfied with the current build in that it completes in 3 or 4 hours on like a modest server that you can rent pretty cheaply. If you use spot instances and want to spend, like build it on a much more powerful machine, you can maybe do it in 1 or 2 hours. But I think generally 3 or 4 hours is a pretty reasonable sort of iteration cycle for the planet. Now, if you're working with a small area, it can be as short as a few minutes. And how do you run it? The focus is on this being a single command. So it is very soup to nuts, straight from raw OpenStreetMap, raw OSM PDF files to a PM tiles archive on your machine. And yeah, you just need a Java runtime installed. But yeah, it's as simple as possible. And it does download other data files. Like I think right now it's just Natural Earth, but in the future that might also include things like Wikidata. And if you just want the standard Basemap tile set and you don't want to run Java on your computer, I also provide a download portal where you can select any arbitrary area of the world, a polygon, and download a tile set. And that is based on minutely data. So if you edit things in OSM, you can download a tile set all through a web UI. So just for comparison, because a lot of the questions I get are as to like how this project relates to other things in the ecosystem. So other vector tile based products or services, there's things out there like Mapbox, Map tiles. One point of emphasis is that the focus of the Protomaps Basemap is the primary use case is the customization and creation of tile sets for your own use on your own storage. That's a little bit different from a model where you might have to merge in changes to an open source project, and then that is deployed by another organization. That creates like a longer sort of life cycle between changes and being able to see the tiles like on the internet. I am running a demo server that has API keys, and I'm trying to make that sort of free forever and that you can use it non-commercially for free. That is supported by GitHub sponsors, so thank you to all GitHub sponsors. And also, one difference between this and some other vector tile projects is to keep just the ODBL produced work license. So compared to TileZen, which is a vector tile project made by MapZen from maybe 5 or 6 years ago, this is generally the target I'm moving towards for all the cartography in the Protomaps build. One nice part about the TileZen vector tile cartography is that it is under a permissive license, so I'm trying to preserve that, as well as also add some enhancements from other data sources such as Natural Earth, potentially things like Overture, and also Wikidata and QRank. Protomaps, Basemap compared to MapLibre. So MapLibre is a complementary but a separate project. Right now, I'm moving more towards MapLibre as the primary renderer for the Protomaps Basemap. There is an existing leaflet renderer I maintain, but that's sort of in maintenance mode because I discovered a lot of the serious users of this technology are focused on MapLibre. And I'm also working on experimental support for open layers. And compared to Planetiler, which is the core tiling library the current open source build is based on, this is sort of downstream from Planetiler. It's an implementation of specific layers and tags, and as well as styles on top of Planetiler core. But where things are possible, sort of general purpose utilities such as PM tile support are being upstreamed into Planetiler. So what's the status? Tiles and styles in a single repo on GitHub. The main caveat is that it is a fairly ugly map at the moment, and that's going to be the focus of a lot of the development going forward, is making it look good and making it flexible in terms of customization. So the roadmap is focused on those design aspects, while up to this point, it's been mostly on the infrastructure. A lot of the advanced things inside of the Basemap build are related to generalization. Something I've spent a lot of time thinking about is the generalization of OpenStreetMap road networks and trying to resolve some of the hairball that happens with off-ramps and highway networks. So there's some kind of like Java-specific logic related to how these off-ramps are generalized. There's also a nice compare tool I made using the Statements Maperture project. So if you can see in the middle, there's a comparison of how those off-ramps look with certain transformations applied to the tags versus if you don't do some of those tricks for off-ramps. So how to customize it right now? Right now, if you want to make your own build, you need to write Java code, and that's not accessible to everyone. So eventually have some more configuration-driven way of doing customization. And to enable layers such as if you are a golfing application and you want to have golfing related OSM features generalized at low zooms, make that simple to make. Skiing, or if you just want to map trash cans, that should be possible too. And thanks to other projects in the ecosystem, so it's the PM tiles tile format itself is totally open source. So there is some implementations in JavaScript and Python I'm maintaining, as well as a couple other options that are more in development right now. And like I said, part of this is running a hosted API through GitHub sponsors. So thanks to all the current and past GitHub sponsors for your contribution. That's helping me run this as an open source project. And for any questions, or if you have questions on how you might, you for your project or your company might want to use this, you can find me on GitHub.